Declaration of interest, procedural rule number 8. Are there any? No. Thank you. Apologies for absence.
Just to say, Chair, that I'm an advisor with the Citizens Advice, just in case that comes up later, under the social prescribing section.
Oh, right. Yeah. Thanks, Sue. Apologies for absence.
Yes, Chairman, we have apologies from Councillor King and Councillor Holland, and Councillor Holland's substitute is Councillor Harrison. And Councillor Nurden will be late, arriving shortly.
Thank you. So no substitute for
No.
King. Okay. Minutes of the meeting held on the 7th of September. First of all, for accuracy, please turn to page 6. And save time rather than going through every single page here. We always take it ONS that everyone's read the documents as you should do, qua judicial situation we're in. So having said that, are there any corrections? No, I'm going gone. Thank you very much. Matters arising. Any matters arising? No. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Chairman's announcements, item 5, none for me. Public speaking, James.
There's no public speaking, Chairman.
Okay, we'll move straight to cabinet reports then. Item 7, first report, independent living assistance policy. Item 11, page 16. Page 16. Hi. And I thought Mike Purcell, or am I?
Mike's unable to attend today, so you've got me instead.
Oh, well, you're most welcome. Sorry, your name?
I'm Louise Simmons. I'm the Housing and Health Manager.
Thank you. Okay.
An award winner. Oh, don't build me up too much.
Okay. And who is with you?
So this is our environmental health apprentice who's come to watch today, Chris Morgan.
Chris Morgan. Thank you very much.
Chris Bunting, sorry. Chris Bunting.
Thank you very much. Both welcome. And fire away, please.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman. So this report sets out the integrated housing adaptations team intentions with regards to how we propose to help vulnerable residents of all ages throughout the district of Broadland. It builds on the grant assistance which is already in place at Broadland. So we're going to keep what we've got, which works really well. So the disabled facilities grant, low-level grants, and further discretionary grants that we have in place. And it builds and expands on those grants just to enable us to help more vulnerable people in different situations. In particular, we have residents with serious illness, mental health, and other social wellbeing situations where we really need to help. And previously, we haven't always been able to be in a position to be able to help because the assistance hasn't been there. So this really enhances what we already have in place. Broadens our approach. It's more proactive. It's preventative. And it really targets the funding where we would really like it to go, and it avoids the dependency on always doing an adaptation. So we're looking at all of options that could prevent unnecessary expenditure on more costly adaptations. So the report is the first phase into further work that we want to do with regards to reviewing and improving the housing integrated housing adaptations team service. We're at the same time we're currently looking at working with our contractors in better ways, introducing more contractors, improving our procedures, documentation, forms that vulnerable residents have to fill in, just making the customer journey easier and more efficient for everybody involved. So the proposed procedures are summarised in the independent living assistance policy, which is included as an appendix to the report. I'm happy to go through the different grant assistance and packages if you would like me to. They're all detailed within the report and summarised in one of the tables in Appendix 1 and 2 of the policy document. But I'm happy to go through those if anybody would like me to. They use resources differently. They're looking at different options. For example, assistive technology. We're looking at ways to try and encourage or promote consideration of moving to a more suitable property rather than adapt one which really isn't suitable. So it's all about trying to prevent unnecessary expenditure and to spend money in the best ways to help people in the best ways. It's taken, since myself and Kevin have been in our roles, we've really looked hard at what both Broadland and South Norfolk teams offer the residents. And we believe we've taken the best of both. We've asked the team, which has great knowledge, experience, and expertise in this field, and we've asked them. I've particularly asked for situations where we haven't been able to help people who really have been in need, and we've drawn all of that together to encompass that into this policy, so that we can try and help people in the best way we possibly can. Okay, so the background, everything that we do with regards to disabled facilities grant is underpinned by legislation, the Housing Grants, Construction and Regeneration Act. As a local authority, we have a duty to provide an adaptation if there's been an assessed need. Typically, that route is an occupational therapist will visit a resident, undertake an assessment and produce a formal recommendation. We then use that recommendation to determine whether an adaptation or equipment is reasonable and practicable, and we help them in the best way that we can. So it is a statutory duty to provide that function. So wherever a need is identified, we have to do that. Since those regulations came in, the Regulatory Reform Order came in 2002, which really did open up the possibility for local authorities to use other discretionary, bring in and use more discretionary opportunities to use the grant funding. Every year we get a grant allocation. So this year, for example, Broadland received £1,013,705. Last year, Broadland received £893,405,000. So that is an increase on last year of roughly £120,000. And that really does reflect how central government sees the importance of our function in integrating housing, health, wellbeing and social care. So it really is important. So the funding comes from central government. It goes through into the Better Care Fund and is allocated to us via the county council. So the county allocates that to us on an annual basis. And we have to spend that in accordance with a locality plan, which is agreed with county. So the locality plan is included in Appendix 1 of the report. So what we have done is our proposals within the new policy, the new grant assistance, we've run those past our colleagues at county, and they were very happy with what we were proposing to bring in, with the variety and the clarity, with the structure, with it all laid out nicely in a table. And they actually said to us they wanted to hold it up as a model of good practice to other local authorities. So that went really well. But the whole point of the policy is having the resident at heart, and we're trying to meet the 5 county-wide integrated housing adaptation teams objectives, which are reducing waiting times for the customer, improving the customer journey, improving the management of housing adaptations, reducing operating costs, and improving customer and delivery of consistency of delivery. So the current positions and findings, we have found as a team that we are having more referrals for people with mental health, serious illness, a wide variety of newer, broader help and assistance that we need to be in a position to provide. It's not all disabilities are physical, and we need to be able to adapt to the variety and provide as much help as we can. The current service we offer a care and repair service. We have care and repair officers who assist the clients, residents, in completing forms. They talk them through the process. They liaise with building contractors and ensure and oversee the building works, adaptation works, right through to successful completion. And at the moment, the charge for that at Broadland is 15% fee. There is a cap to that fee currently, which is £1,500. The important thing to say about that fee is that it's usually incorporated within the grant. So it's at no further cost to the resident because it's absorbed into the grant, and we fund that as part of the grant. The other thing to say, which the report focuses on, is we currently charge, and have done for a substantial period of time at Broadland, a land charge procedure. So these are for larger grants in excess of £5,000. The land charge is up to a maximum of 10,000 and lasts for a period of maximum of 10 years. The purpose of that land charge is if we allocate funding for an adaptation and the resident decides they want to move house, or unfortunately they die. And we then have the land charge procedure that we can use to recuperate that funding and then reinvest it into the service. So the proposals, there are 3 recommendations within the report. The first one is to incorporate the new independent living assistance policy. The second one is regarding the care and repair fee, which, as I said, is currently capped at £1,500. The proposal is to remove that cap. So the fee stays the same at 15%, but there's no cap. And we've predicted or estimated that could bring in an additional funding of 15 to 18,000 per annum for the service to reinvest in the service. And then the final recommendation is to keep the existing land charge procedure, which we've already got in place at Broadland, but also to apply that to one of the discretionary grants that we want to bring in, which is the Gaining Independence grant. So it's keeping it the same for what we've already got, but introducing it for the Gaining Independence grant. So those are the 3 recommendations. If there are any questions, or if anyone would like me to go through the assistance policy, I'll be happy to do so.
Thanks very much. Taking through the sections there. Natasha?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies, I couldn't get the thing up here, but I did read it when it was attached to the wellbeing meeting notes. Can you clarify, does this apply to people who are in social housing? Because does it prevent them being moved on? Because I know there are people who are inappropriately housed due to their disability, such as they need bathroom adaptation or access or whatever else, and they're on the register to find somewhere more appropriate to live. They've been told you could be waiting years, so they've applied to have adaptations made before, and the housing associations have blocked them. Or you move into somewhere and you have to take it, but adaptations have already been made, such as a wet room or whatever, and it's not suitable for family use, and the housing association then won't change your bathroom or whatever because we installed this and our policy says it has to last 10 years or whatever. So, where do you stand with that?
Yeah, well, we've got within this new policy, we've got two additional schemes that we would like to introduce, which would help with that situation. The first one is we're proposing a relocation grant, which may encourage housing association tenants to look at other opportunities, and we can financially assist them into moving to an alternative property that may be more suitable. So we can help. The proposal is 5,000, maximum 5,000 grant for that, which may help with relocation costs or settling into a new property. The second and probably more important one for in that respect is we've called it a void adapted property procedure. So what that is we would like to, when we've got an already adapted property which becomes vacant, and that could include a housing association Clarion property. So when an already adapted property becomes vacant, we can hold that open for a period of 6 weeks, and the procedure will allow us to fund the rent for a period of up to 6 weeks to hold that property vacant for somebody with needs to move into. So that will help with that. But we can work more closely with the housing associations with regards to matching the property to the person. And we want to do that and try and avoid moving somebody into a property that really isn't suitable for them. And there's also always the possibility that they may not be eligible for funding. So that initial matching up process is really important. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, there seems to be quite a few people who are languishing on waiting lists, and they're stuck where they need work done, but they can't have it because the housing association and then blocking them, or people who are desperate to be housed and they just take the first property that comes along, which you would do if you're overcrowded or whatever, and it's just not suitable for. And there could be someone further down on the list who actually would really need that property, and it saves all that duplication as well, doesn't it?
We had a meeting on Friday actually with our housing solutions team, and we were talking about ways that we can cut that waiting time, and whether there is a waiting time for OT resource at county. The occupational therapists sit within county, and we need that recommendation to know what is recommended for the adaptation. So we need that OT expertise. However, we do have trusted assessors, our care and repair officers that sit within our team, which we'd very much like to make the most of. They're trusted, they're assessors, and there is certain work with regards to that we could use them for to speed up that process.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you. Carolyn?
Thanks, Chair. Louise, through my own experience, my own grandson's had the Disabled Facilities Grant, and that was about 6-7 years ago, and it worked really well. But the limit then was £30,000. It stayed £30,000 for the last 6-7 years. With the rising cost of building supplies at the moment, do you think this is the time to actually increase that limit?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. And this policy attempts to address those issues as best we possibly can. The maximum £30,000 limit is set within Disabled Facilities Grant legislation. So the legislation I quoted to you earlier, that is the maximum limit. And unfortunately, it has been that way for, as you say, several years. There is a review of the Disabled Facility Grant. There is a report which is due by the end of this year, actually. The 30,000 we cannot do anything about at the moment. However, one of the new grants introduced within this policy is a top-up grant, which can be used to increase the funding by an additional £10,000. We have used that really successfully with a housing association recently, actually, where we part-funded additional top-up. So we went 50-50 on the top-up. So we put in 10,000 and they put in 10,000, and it worked really well. So yeah, we've got the top-up grant. We've also got other grants within here which can assist to bump it up a bit. For example, the architect's grant. So if there's a larger project, which it probably would be, if it's going to be 30,000, you'd need architect fees. So we've got a grant which would take that out of the main grant. So again, that would add an additional funding to it. So we've done the best we can working around what limitations we've got. But we will obviously hope that the maximum funding is increased.
Just an odd point. I mean, this is administered by social services, presumably at county. I mean, how do they decide which of the areas get the most money? I mean, is it deprivation or?
David, sorry, could you just move to the mic, because
Sorry,
a number
yeah.
of people around the room are struggling to hear you.
I just wondered
Including
how we
Ken.
rated with the other local authorities in terms of grant. I mean, deprivation, this.
It's population numbers.
Just strictly population.
Yeah.
I see.
If you look at the locality, in Appendix 2 or 3, I think it is, there's a letter where it details what funding goes to which local authority, and it's on population size.
Thanks.
Yeah, and just in terms of declaration, we've had the references to county here, and Minister of County, so we just need to upgrade the declaration, county councillor, just cover that. Thank you. So just clarity here. So if we go back to page 18, the fee for the service is 15% of the total cost for adaptive work, and it's currently capped at 1,500. You're saying you're going to lift that cap?
Yeah, we'd like to do that. At South Norfolk Council, there's a 15% fee again, so that's very consistent, but there's no cap. and it's been that way for a substantial period of time and has caused no issues. And as I said, the fee is incorporated within the grant, so it's at no additional cost.
So that's the second follow through. So it's incorporated within the grant. Grant limit is
30,000. Well, it depends
30,000.
which grant. It
Yeah,
depends
it depends.
but the disabled facilities grant
Yeah.
maximum is 30,000.
it's 30,000.
Mhm.
So this comes out of the grant, which at maximum 30,000, which picked up from the appendix. So if there's no cap on this, then the fees are increasing, which hits the grant. And this is just the scrutiny point, you see, which hits the grant and then could reduce the amount of grant because the fee's higher. If it was, say, £3,000, it's now another 1,500 coming out of the grant available for works. Is that?
Yeah, potentially, but we would hope that the other grant assistance that we've introduced, we've got, as I said, the top-up grant, but also a contribution grant available as well. So where there is the client resident has to make a contribution, we've got a contribution grant included within here that we can assist them financially for that purpose.
So now the third point to that is, so if the top-up grant then applies, is it directly related to trying to find the extra sum of money above what was the cap, 1,500? Is that directly to do that so that the grant available for the build, whatever, is still the same as it always was? Or not necessarily?
No, it's to cover the care and repair officer costs involved in the service that's provided. And with the larger builds, adaptations, there is more time and work involved in those particular cases. But and also our care and repair officers, for the larger works, we do work really hard to find additional sources of funding for the client. So we go to charitable organisations and adult social care. We've negotiated additional top-ups with. We really do work hard to try and find the additional funding to enable the adaptation to go ahead. And I can't think of one instance where we've had to say no due to the funding.
Okay. So I'm going to put this another way around now. So is it possible that because the top-up grant is no longer capped, is it possible that there could be a scenario where other forms of money have not covered the additional sum now, and therefore the actual grant has been hit, and therefore the value of that is lower? Is there a possibility around that?
There is a possibility. I can't think of a circumstance where that has arisen. However,
Well, could I just rephrase this? In Broadland, this policy has not happened yet.
No.
So you're referring to it's not happened previously in South Norfolk.
Broadland, because Broadland has in the past had top-up grants available at various occasions as well. So it hasn't been a problem in the past. But what I would say is the care and repair fee, if it meant, I mean, it is possible that we could adjust the fee if necessary to enable the adaptation to go ahead for the resident, if there was a need. But we would always look to get the additional funding from elsewhere. And we've always been able to achieve that.
But you've had the cap before.
Yes, the cap has always been the cap. The 30,000 cap has always been.
Okay, so the point I'm just trying to clarify is now the cap comes in.
Yeah.
There's a possibility that funding could be reduced because we've now not got a cap.
There's a possibility.
There's a possibility. Okay. There's a point I want to make to all of this in the moment, but before I do, I'll stop. Is there anyone else? Yeah. So
It's on a separate issue. Is that okay?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, how do you get the approaches? By what means do the approaches come to you for these various requirements? And given that 40% of the over 75s don't use the internet, how do you make sure that anybody who might need this help actually can make an approach easily to the council?
Good question. It's very much telephone based at Broadland currently. So we have an assistant practitioner, and all referrals into the service, they come from a variety of routes. So somebody could phone the council directly and say they need assistance. And they usually come through to our housing technical advisors within the housing standards team. And then they get referred to our assistant practitioner who undertakes a triage to prioritise the cases. They also come from county council, occupational therapists. Somebody could go directly to their GP and be referred to an occupational therapist, and then that comes into us from locality. So yeah, they can. Someone could go online and apply, but it's typically telephone or email, usually.
Okay, so are you seeing an increase in private rented or privately owned homeowners coming to you for assistance?
Yes, we are.
Are they fully aware of how the council might be able to help them?
Yeah, that's something else we have discussed that we want to work on, as well as promoting what we do and can offer. Obviously, if the grant assistant has the approval, then that's something that we have discussed that we would like to do. We have to be careful about budget as well. So, I mean, we have an annual allocation, and as I said earlier, that we do have a statutory duty to provide the disabled facility grant where there is an assessed need. So we have to have that money available to do that. So within this policy, what the proposal is the increase in funding that we've received from last year. We propose to use that on the discretionary additional assistance. And then we've built into the policy, we will monitor the budget really closely on a monthly basis. And if we need to spend more on, if we have the budget to spend more on discretionary assistance, we've got that option to do so with the approval of the assistant director and portfolio holder. That's what we've built into this. So we've done that deliberately for a reason. If for example, last year was the first year we underspent on our grant budget. And that was because of COVID lockdown restrictions. So we were given, we were permitted to carry forward any leftover funding from last year. So this year we've got an additional budget. What we don't know whether that's going to be possible every year. So if there's anything left in the budget, there is a possibility that we have to hand it back to county at the end of the financial year. What we don't want to do is we want to make good use of our money. And spend it in the best way we can for our residents. So this will enable us to do that. So if we can spend, if we haven't fully spent on the disabled facilities grant budget, we have the option here to dip into to provide more discretionary assistance and help people in greater ways.
We'll go back to recommendations. Because I want to come back on this point. I just obviously need to give everybody an opportunity to ask what they wanted. I'm a bit concerned because it's about the 30,000 and the cap being removed, and that the possibility, just try to clarify that. I just spent some points trying to do it. That it means that there could be less than the previous amount available for the actual purpose of the main purpose of the grant. It's 30,000 figure. So I'm not really reading an absolute situation here to ensure that if that was to occur, that some way, shape or form, the maximum amount, apart from the 15% capped, if you like, is going to be covered. So the saving here is to who? So the 1,500 cap being removed, does that mean that Broadland from direct funds are saving some funds, and therefore it is hoped that via other grants or charity grants, which you mentioned, could cover it? Is that?
Yeah, that would be the case. And I can't think of any case that we've dealt with where we haven't been able to successfully achieve charitable funding to top up to enable the works to proceed.
Okay. What charities are these?
Also, they can be occupational related. So if somebody's previously been in the forces, there's a charity that can help there. Motor neurons disease, for example, specific illness charities. And we've always been able to be able to secure that for people.
Okay. I'm still concerned about it because I think from the questioning that we've done, and it's just appropriate. ONS question is clearly, officers will always come forward, revise policies, but is our role to sort of scrutinise that going to cabinet. And I think we've just been through some pretty important information actually about this grant and the cap fee. I think from at least my own point of view at the moment, we'll get on to recommendation. I'm not happy actually. The cap's been removed. There's a saving to Broadland at the heart of this. I'm not quite sure why, what the driver for that is. And it's hoped that charities will cover this, or grants from elsewhere. Now, that's one thing, but at the end of the day, if that doesn't cover the full amount, for whatever reason, because it's been stated that it's certainly a possibility, in a transparent way, and appreciate that, we need transparency, then I think we've actually reduced the effect of the policy for the people applying for it. That it just is, in terms of the money available.
I think if that situation was to arise, we would seriously look at the case and have a discussion with the assistant director and portfolio holder and see if we could do something with regards to the fee to enable the works to go ahead.
So that would rely upon that discussion.
But it'd be on a case by case basis.
Thank you. I personally would like to see some kind of better arrangement in than this to try to cover the situation. I'm actually going to put forward an amendment. Vote will happen whatever way it happens. But the amendment I'd like to see go forward is that the cabinet, the officers involved and the cabinet ensure that this policy is amended in some way to ensure that now this cap, which is being lifted, does not result in a reduction in terms of the monies available for the purpose, the build, etc., than would have otherwise been before the cap was lifted. And to have some assurance around that, because I think that's the right thing to do for our residents in terms of the previous situation. So that would be the proposal, Sue.
Chair, could I ask for just some clarification of an example of where this has happened in the past before the cap was lifted and what the difference it will make in the future, because I'm not quite sure I understand that.
Okay, so where a grant is issued, say for example the maximum care and repair fee results, and it's currently capped at 1,500. So say for example a disabled facility grant of 30,000, that would be incorporated into that. So it would take it down to sort of 28.5 available for the adaptation works to go ahead. If you think that on average, the average disabled facilities grant that we do is roughly about 6,000 to 7,000, the majority of them being bathroom adaptations for the introduction of level access showers, for example. So the larger ones are for where we haven't been able to utilise the existing space within a property to put an adaptation in place within the existing curtilage, and we've had to then build on an extension. I would say at Broadland we probably do possibly four a year as a rough estimate of larger ones. So where the grant funding hasn't been enough, either the client has had to contribute some towards the grant, we've achieved charitable funding for the grant, or the housing association has also contributed towards the grant if it was a housing association property.
What's the effect of lifting the cap then?
On the cap. So the care and repair fee is 15% of the total cost of the works. So say the total cost of the works was £30,000, it would be 15% of that, but it would be capped. So it stops, the highest fee would be £1,500. So that would then, if you incorporate that into the grant, it would take the available money for adaptation work down to 28,500 as opposed to 30.
Earlier on, there would be a reduction, you'd say. Tasha, sorry, please switch yourself on.
Thanks, Ian. I'm a bit uncomfortable asking charities to contribute to this, considering their limited finances. And also, would it make more work for you having to contact charities?
We've been doing that piece of work for a substantial period of time at both Broadland and South Norfolk. That's part of the care and repair service. So we would always liaise with charity organisations, and typically the recent one we've done is the motor neurones disease, and they contributed a significant amount of money to enable an adaptation to go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, I'm still uncomfortable asking charities to contribute to something the council has provided in the past.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Natasha?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Caroline kind of covered quite a lot of it, really. I think if you have a policy that requires intervention from the cabinet or whatever each time you're at a sort of sticking point, I don't think it's a particularly good policy in that area. And also, one of the things you mentioned was about speeding things up. If you're then having to arrange to have a conversation with the cabinet member and then going on to charities and all the rest of it, I don't think that's helping to speed things up. And again, as a matter of principle, saying with Caroline said, I'm not particularly comfortable with things which should be statutory services being filled in by charities who are already really pushed. I think it can make people feel like charity cases themselves. It doesn't help with their dignity. And also, if you don't fit within any of the particular remits, motor neuron disease, X service or whatever, and you don't have those funds yourself, then you're really stuck as well. So I am quite uncomfortable. I'm pleased with it overall, and that there are more things available, but removing that cap and all the things that go with it, that just leaves me a little bit uncomfortable.
Okay. We would always use the grant and assistance that's available to us to the maximum potential in the first instance. So we would only go to charities if we can't achieve what we need to, or actually if sometimes the client wants something. A bathroom adaptation, we provide the basic sort of standard for their needs. If they want something a little bit more or a bit special or a bit different, then sometimes we go to charities to help them achieve that. So.
Okie dokie. Okay, so I'd like to move and see if there's a second to first of all the amendment that suggested out of the debate and scrutiny that's occurred, of course. James, could you just read it?
Chairman, that you propose that.
Just one moment. Jim might be able to help us there.
Thank you, Chairman. It's actually a question I wanted to ask of Louise that because I'm not sure of my own understanding, but to the discussion about the 30k cap. Am I right in understanding, Louise, that because we have in our own policy put forward the idea of a discretionary top up for 15k, effectively the amount available to people isn't 30, it's 45. If I've read it rightly.
Yeah, so potentially.
And that's a discretionary decision the council has taken beyond that, which is statutorily required of us.
That's correct. So we've got the 30,000 maximum disabled facilities grant. So that's just the disabled facilities grant. Within this policy, we've got the options to include a top-up grant, which is an additional 10,000. And we've got other assistance available as well. We've got a contribution grant, which is up to £5,000 to help pay off any residents' contribution towards the grant. And we've also got architects grant, which we can use if they want to incorporate assistive technology. We can use that. We can use a multitude of these discretionary grants to help achieve what we need to. So if we can use another grant to counteract using all of the DFG budget 30,000 limit, then when we would do so, we could use the architects grant, top-up grant, whatever is included within this policy, we could potentially use in addition to the basic disabled facilities grant.
And thanks for that, Chairman, because we've now actually got a different response to the one I had earlier. Yeah, you've picked this up, because the clear question I was asking earlier was, is it possible, because I actually did mention the other grants available, the top-up grant, etc.
Yeah.
I did mention those,
Yes.
to see whether those would cover it. And then I said, well, if those are used, could we still be in a position, is it possible that we could still be in the same position where there is a reduction, it could be 500, 1,000, whatever it is, as a result of lifting the cap? And the answer was possibly yes. So that was the point I was clarifying, Jamie.
Understood, Chairman. And I think if I've understood correctly, because of the discretionary framework we've wrapped around because of the regulatory reform orders, actually the council is widening its offer and ability to provide the right solutions to people rather than any limitation, which I think is quite understandably the line of questioning you or challenge you were putting back. So my understanding is actually the array of services available is much wider than we are statutorily obliged to provide, and therefore hopefully a better solution for our residents.
Okay, so just to clarify this again, so the situation is now, because the top-up grants, the effect of removing the cap would not affect the grant available by 500, 200, 1,000, 2,000, whatever it is, whatsoever. There's never a possibility.
No, we have the other discretionary assistance available within the policy, but there's always the possibility that an adaptation job could come in, which is substantially, we have had cases where they're 70, 80,000, but we have managed to achieve those by...
Okay. And in that situation, when we're going right above it, that's where it could get
Yeah.
affected. Yeah, exactly.
But the majority are within.
Thanks, Jamie, for that. But we have actually really clarified this now.
Yeah.
So that would still mean that would still have this amendment to put in place. But thanks, Jamie. Right, okie dokie. So, yeah, James, could you just read that? That's just I've got to change my glasses, by the way. I'm well overdue. So I just changed my bifocals here. Right, the Cabinet amend the policy to ensure that lifting the cap does not result in less funding being available than otherwise would have been available before the cap was lifted. Cabinet amend the policy to. Yeah, well, that's pretty. Yeah, okie dokie. Yeah, so is there a second to that or not? Right. The Cabinet amend the policy to ensure that lifting the cap does not result in less funding being available than otherwise would have been available before the cap was lifted. Yeah. Yeah. So is there a second for that? Okie dokie. Okay, so I'll put this first and we'll come back onto the other recommendation, recommendation as specified in the document. All those in favour of the amendment, please show.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okie dokie. But you can guess where the casting vote's going, yeah? Okie dokie. Now, where does it leave us with the rest of the recommendation? Let's turn to that now. Oh, it'd be
recorded.
it always is with us, Peter, so you have the vote recorded, unlike some other meetings, but here it's always recorded. And also when I go to the cabinet, I do reflect it as well, I always do. I say what the vote was. But just watch, you'll see I always do it.
Thanks, Chair. Just a point of clarity, really. What are the criteria for people to be eligible for any of these grants?
Well, there has to be an assessed need. So it's either physical disability, it can be a personality disorder. It could be something that's assessed by an occupational therapist, and whatever they assess and recommend as a need, that's what we would then work with. But it doesn't have to be a physical disability. It could be serious illness, mental health illness, a wide variety of things.
So it's always a medical
Yes.
referral.
Yeah, we do have grants in there which do not rely on a professional medical diagnosis. For example, dementia grant, forget-me-not grant. That's one of our lead assessors would assess where the evidence of dementia. Other than that, they're all medical professional diagnosis.
Okay, we're going to go to the recommendation now because we spent quite a bit of time on this. And I think it's been well covered, actually. So recommendation 1, 2 and 3, we'll now move to that. I propose that we do accept that, but with the amendment. Yeah. So we're not asking for much, actually, in that amendment. Yes, as written, 1, 2 and 3, propose independent living assistance policy, 2, revised care and repair fees procedure, and 3, a revised land charge procedure as amended. All those in favour, please show.
Must be unanimous, Jim.
Report that bit was unanimous, Peter. Thank you very much, and thanks very much for your time this morning, and for your transparent replies. Much appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item. Item 12, Warm Homes Fund additional funding. Are you?
Karen Strandu is now hovering at the door, waiting to come in to do this one.
Page 60, Ken. Yeah.
Hello, Karen. Welcome. And we're on page 60. Would you please amplify?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
So just to outline this paper, it outlines the needs to develop further contracts using new and existing procurement frameworks to deliver renewable heating and insulation measures to fuel poor residents right across Norfolk. And since establishing the Warm Homes programme back in 2018, we've been successful in securing additional funding sources from government, actually in 2 phases. The first phase was for 1.24 million, and the second phase, which we're still delivering, is for 1.78 million. And this is to further support fuel poor residents across Norfolk. We're also waiting to hear about a further bid that we submitted about 3 or 4 months ago for 3.75 million. This is for a year, beginning in January and ending in March 23. Hopefully we'll hear about that funding later this month, fingers crossed. So we're currently delivering the renewable and insulation measures. We're using 2 contracts through procurement frameworks, namely the Efficiency East Midlands Framework and the Eastern Procurement Framework. And under the Eastern Procurement Framework, we've been working with Dodds Group, who are based in Norfolk, for the delivery of air source heat pumps and high retention storage heaters. This contract expired on the 30th of September, and we now need to continue delivering under that second phase of grant funding to the end of March. Therefore, we now need a new contract for about £500,000 to continue delivering for that second phase of government grant funding. We also need a new contract now for the delivery of loft and cavity wall insulation. Our existing contract has been maxed out in terms of the financial headroom in it. And we've identified a third procurement framework called Fusion 21 that can offer contracts to deliver these measures, again, across Norfolk. And should we be successful in our new bid, we wish to contract further using procurement frameworks. So a flexible approach is needed going forward. The benefits really of contracting under these frameworks is that we can comply with procurement legislation and work with local contractors without having to go through the lengthy and frankly costly procurement exercises ourselves. So in summary, we're requesting that Cabinet agrees to enter into a new contract with Dodds Group and establish a new contract under Fusion 21 for loft and cavity wall insulation. And because we need the flexibility, should we be successful in the new grant from the government, we would like to agree that future use of procurement frameworks be delegated to the Assistant Director and in discussion with the portfolio holder. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone wish to ask, clarify? No. I think it's pretty straightforward, actually. Should we just move to recommendation? Okey-dokey. Right, so the recommendation, is in two parts. To agree the development of contracts to complete the 1.7.8 million allocated through LAD 1B for energy efficiency and heating measures to support residents in Norfolk and live in warm homes. Two, to agree the delegation of procuring future successful funding bids to procurement frameworks to the Assistant Director of Individuals and Families in consultation with portfolio holder until July 2023. Okay, all those in favour? Wonderful.
Now, Mr. Chairman.
And thank you very much. That was well done. Item 13, mobile homes fee policy, page 65, Ken.
Back to me again.
And I think after this, it'd be the right time actually to have a comfort break. I think we just finish after that.
Okay.
Fire away, please.
Thank you, Karen. So this report relates to new legislation that has been introduced earlier this year in relation to caravan site licenses, and the regulations that have come in are the mobile homes requirement for manager of sites to be fit and proper persons, England regulations 2020. So basically what this means is the regulations require site owners, caravan site owners, to be a fit and proper person to run and manage the site. So the regulations apply to protected sites only. So protected sites are residential caravan sites. And they're called protected because the residents have certain rights under tenancy and occupancy mobile homes legislation. So the report provides a background as to what we've traditionally done here at Broadland. At the moment, we currently already have an inspection programme of caravan sites throughout the district. And we currently already have a fees procedure which applies to residential or protected caravan sites. We've got 4 on the district, which are included in Appendix 1 to this report. So they only apply to those commercial protected sites. The regulations do not apply to family-run sites where you've just got one family. We do have sites where we've just got one caravan and one family occupying the site, but because it's there, it's got planning permission, it has got a license. So it doesn't apply to family-owned individual sites, but it does apply to commercially operated larger residential sites throughout the district. So the fit and proper person application is quite a rigorous application procedure, actually. They have to submit a criminal records check. They have to provide evidence with regards to land ownership, management experience, capabilities, financial background, financial capability to be able to run the site properly and in accordance with the site license conditions. So there's guidance. There's guidance from the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government on what constitutes a fit and proper person. So we would always follow that guidance as to in the determination of whether somebody is fit and proper. There's also guidance on a fee procedure. So the legislation, the fit and proper person legislation, brings in the local authorities can charge for a fee for the application process to cover the costs involved in determining whether somebody is a fit and proper person. The legislation also brings in the possibility of charging an annual fee for the safe operation of the site in accordance with licence conditions. So we've had discussions regarding this, and because we've already got an annual inspection programme with a licence fee associated with our residential sites, we've decided not to include an additional fee for annual fee, but we would like to introduce a fee to cover our costs, officer costs involved in processing applications to determine whether people are fit and proper persons. So, as I said, we've got four sites on our district at the moment. The legislation came in phases. So the first phase were for local authorities to be ready to receive applications for fit and proper persons from the 1st of April. And then from the 1st of October, we're to be in a position to be able to process those applications. We have now received four applications for all of our sites on Broadland. So we liaised with them. It provided guidance on what the new legislation involved. We got the application form together ready to process this new legislation. So we have had all applications in, and the whole point of this policy is to enable us to. We have to have a fees procedure agreed and published to cover the application of fit and proper persons. So that's the main part of the policy. So with regards to the fit and proper person application, what happens is if we determine that they are a fit and proper person, they go onto a public register for a period of 5 years. After that 5-year period, they then have to reapply and go through the same process again, and therefore the same fee will apply after that 5-year period. We can make the decision to determine that a person isn't fit and proper. Where that situation occurs, there is a right of appeal, and the applicant can then either make an appeal, or they can propose that another person goes forward to apply to be a fit and proper person to manage that site. So they can delegate somebody in that management responsibility. Where that happens, they have to appeal within a 28-day period of our decision. And they can either nominate somebody straight away within that 28-day period, or they can inform the local authority, us, that they intend to nominate somebody else. And where that situation occurs, they have a 3-month period to nominate somebody else. So then that person, nominated person, would then have to apply and go through the exact same process with the exact same proposed fee to be charged. So when we have a decision as to if they are fit and proper, they would then go on to a public register, which we would put onto the website and have available for observation. There is also the opportunity to determine that somebody is fit and proper, but with conditions attached. And so those conditions could relate to something specific regarding that site that we had concerns about, or that one of the conditions could be that they pay the annual fee if we were to impose one, but that's not what we've decided to do in this situation. So we've got, the sites we have got are all inspected annually anyway, and they already have an annual inspection fee, which but they pay and have done for a substantial period of time. That policy was introduced in 2014. The new part is the fit and proper person. And so the proposal, the recommendation is to introduce the fee as set out in the appendix to the policy report for the charge involved in covering our costs of operating the service. And then within the appendix is a well set out structure of breakdown of what the costs involved are, officer time, and the actual work activities involved in that. Okay, so the recommendations are, the first one is to include the enforcement of these new regulations as part of the housing standards responsibility. The second recommendation is to approve the fee structure as detailed in the mobile homes fee policy included in this report. And thirdly, delegate authority to the Senior Housing Standards Manager to approve fit and proper person applications. So what we've set up at the moment is the applications have come in and community enforcement officers have looked at the applications. This is all new, so we want to be consistent and make sure we're doing the right thing. So we've looked at them all together, and then the final decision will go to the Housing Standards Senior Manager. Thank you.
Right. Any questions, Peter?
You won't be surprised to know I'm particularly interested in this matter, since Haveringland is very much on my patch. 2 questions. To what extent are you going to be able to call on the actual residents of these said properties to establish whether or not the person, and I use the person guardedly because in the case of Haverland, it's never quite clear who the person is or should be. The ownership is, to say the least, somewhat murky. What opportunities exist for the residents to actually express their view on whether or not that person is fit and proper?
Okay, so the new legislation acts in our favour with regards to ownership. The application form makes it very clear they have to provide, as part of that application, land registry evidence. So it makes it very clear who owns the land. It makes it very clear you have to specify who is the nominated person to operate and manage that site. So basically, we have it in a document signed that this person is fit and proper and takes all responsibility to ensure the operation of that site and licence conditions. With regards to the residents' views, what is included within that fit and proper person determination is the history of compliance. So where we have a history of complaints, we would take those into consideration. If there are existing breaches of site licence conditions, for example, we would take that very seriously, and it would definitely be a consideration determined in our decision-making process. If they were previous complaints which have been complied with, again, we would have to take a view on that.
Would I be able to express views?
Well,
Try and stop me.
we would have to consider previous history of compliance at the site. So whether that's a councillor opinion, a resident's opinion with regards to a complaint that's been made, we would have to consider all of those representations.
So, for example, I and the parish council could put together a list of our concerns about whether or not the site was compliant or not.
Yes, we would have to have evidence that there was
Of course,
non-compliance of site
course.
licence conditions.
But we could actually put a list together which we think are non-complying.
If you wanted to do so.
I'm sure I would.
I mean, the procedure also involves a criminal records check. So it goes
I don't think anything criminal has been done, although the question of mis-selling has been an issue, but we won't concern ourselves with that.
Mhm.
Sue and Natasha,
Thank you, Chair.
not together, obviously.
I was just wondering, has it been suggested that any situation where there's a conflict or an appeal should come to the Licensing and Regulatory Committee? I'm wondering why, for example, if there's appeal about taxi drivers and so on, they come to that committee, why this licence wouldn't have to come back to there if there's conflict?
It's built into the legislation and the guidance from the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government. If there's an appeal, it goes to the first tier property tribunal. If the applicant doesn't agree with the decision-making process, it goes to the first tier. It's specified, that's the process, the appeal process, yeah.
Natasha?
Thank you, Chair. Couple of questions. If you said that if they're declared a fit and proper person, and this is then valid for 5 years, what happens within that 5-year period if something is then brought to light? Is it a lengthy process to then remove someone as a fit and proper person?
No, it's a really good question. We do have the ability to revoke a licence. So if something serious was brought to our attention which questioned whether that person was no longer fit and proper to operate the site effectively, we could review the licence and potentially revoke it.
Thank you. And my second question is, sometimes with these kind of sites, as he just, I've forgotten your name again, I said he, Peter, sometimes things are a bit murky with who's in charge of what. So there may well be the named person, but it's their associates who seem to have lots of fingers and lots of pies. One of the problems that I've seen coming up regarding to these kind of sites is modern slavery and people trafficking. You never really know who is responsible. So if it is someone who's associated with this person, but you just can't quite pin it on the named person, it's just, a complaint is made about, their associates. How do you then tie that in?
The application form is extremely useful in that respect because it asks, we have to get evidence of land ownership, management, any interested persons, and what their interest is. And it's all documented, signed. So it should be fairly clear cut as to who is responsible for what. With any of these things, with regards to allegations, we have to have sufficient evidence to be able to demonstrate that there's been a breach of licence conditions or police legislation, if it's more serious.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sue?
Too many.
I
think you need to turn yours off.
Sorry.
That's right. Thank you. It is actually going on a sort of additional to what part of what Natasha said anyway. This period of 5 years, this person is licensed, and for whatever reason, you've had to reduce their to revoke their license. What happens then? Replacement person B comes in. Does she complete the 5-year block that was originally licensed, or do they start a new 5-year block?
When anybody new nominated to be the fit and proper person, they'd have to go through the application process. So
Indeed, but it's the person that is licensed for 5 years, as opposed to the Havering site or the Newton St Faith's site.
Yeah, it would be the nominated person who would apply. Yes.
Yeah, and so theoretically, Mr. B could move on and use 2 years at Haveringland, and the subsequent 3 years for which he is licensed, he could move to another one if he wished, if he was still legal.
No, because he would be the fit and proper person named at that site. So if he moved to the other part of the application process actually is to liaise with other local authorities if the site owners own multiple sites in different local authority areas. So we liaise with them too to determine their history of compliance, for example. So the fit and proper person registration applies to that person at that site.
Fine. Thank you very much. It was something that occurred to me after the wellbeing meeting last week, at which you spoke about this. And I suddenly thought when I got home, oh golly, there's a bit of an overlap. Thank you. Thank you very much.
It'd have to be site driven, otherwise it's a nonsense, isn't it? It wouldn't work really any other way. So, yeah, thanks for that clarification. And Ken, I believe you wanted to.
Thank you, Chair. You have 4 sites at the moment. Are we looking for any other sites, or have you any other sites in mind, or are other sites being applied?
Not that I'm aware of. Obviously, if somebody applies, they would have to get a license in the first place. They would have to have the appropriate planning permissions. We would not issue a license without planning permission.
There's no demand or inquiries for additional sites as far as we're concerned.
I think there probably is demand, but we haven't received any applications.
I see. And we would leave it and wait for applications rather than try to get any other new sites.
Yes, yeah. We haven't. We're not actively seeking.
Right. Thank you, Chairman.
We're probably ready to go to recommendation. Unless somebody wants to ask anything else. Yes, wonderful. A, B, and C. It is up on the screen actually, so I'm not going to take up time reading it out. You've all read it. You know what it is. So could I just put those 3 points, A, B, and C, to the vote, please? All those in favour?
That's unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Right, it's Grant.
Sorry, I abstain because I arrived late. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Grant.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8,
Okay.
9, 10 in favour, and 1 abstention.
I won't need to explain to the cabinet why I won't worry about that abstention, Peter. Right, so it's 11:15. We take comfort break till 25 past. Welcome, Kerry. Nice to see you again. So next item 14, page 80, social prescribing contracting with the NHS. Please fire away, Kerry.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. I'm just going to run through a little bit of detail. You've all seen the report, so I won't bore you. But social prescribing is something that we have talked about at Cabinet before and at other policy committees and scrutiny in the past. Social prescribing is jargony. It's something that we talk about nationally, and we expect people to know what we are talking about. So social prescribing is effectively the process of supporting a person in a medical setting without using medicine. I suppose is the best way to describe it. So it will come as no surprise to you that a lot of people seek support from their GPs, their local nurses, because it's a trusted source. It's where people go for help and assistance. And a lot of social issues will manifest themselves in physical symptoms in a lot of cases. We think about a real uprising in anxiety disorders and that sort of thing are at times caused by some social issues that we might be able to support with. So the idea of social prescribing is to place an officer within a GP setting, within a medical setting, or give that GP setting access to an officer that will be able to help that person. In our experience as one team, we've done that through the Community Connector service, which previously has operated in the south of Norfolk for some time. And we have recently employed Community Connectors in Broadland with thanks to the support that members gave via the COVID Outbreak Management Fund. We've been able to trial that Community Connector role. So we've adopted kind of a hybrid, really. We employ community connectors to work not just within the GP setting, but also out and about in the community. So residents have access to them via a number of different means, but we know that the majority of people they see do come through that medical route. The report today is a real positive step in where we're getting to on this journey in Broadland. We set out some pretty clear aspirations a few months ago to provide a service to Broadland residents through the Community Connector role. We were able in the short term to fund some of those through the COVID Outbreak Management Fund, and I'm pleased to report that we now have a contract on the table with the NHS for 2 years to fund three community connector posts and one senior community connector for parts of Broadland. I appreciate that this does not cover the entirety of our district, but to use the phrase we use a lot, this is a part of a journey. We always knew that this wasn't something we could achieve kind of 100% coverage for overnight. So you'll see in the report, as I have highlighted today, that we suggest that we'll take on this contract from last December. We are not time travelers. That should say 2021. So if anyone spotted that glaring error, then I apologise. There's one number wrong and it couldn't have been the worst one. But the proposal is that we start this from December, so just a couple of months away. And we will be contracted to work in a number of surgeries in the sort of the north part of the district. In addition to that, we will operate within 4 additional surgeries, which are actually in the North Norfolk district boundary. Now, that's not uncommon. We unfortunately live in a world where not all boundaries meet other boundaries. So we have to work within NHS boundaries to deliver as we do. That said, our residents don't live within their boundaries either. A number of our residents will actually be patients of services that are in North Norfolk. So we will reach those residents by providing that service within those locations. And it's a model that we are used to providing in other areas as well. Now, this service will come at no cost to the council. The funding that we receive from the NHS covers all of our costs in its entirety. So the 3 community connectors will be supported by the additional more senior community connector who will provide all line management and supervision. We cover all travel costs with the NHS funding, all comms costs, and by and large, there are little to no kind of office-based overheads for these members of staff because they're largely based at home or out in the community. So real minimal to no impact on us as an organisation, and where they're far outweighed by the positives. So our social prescribing model, in that sense, by taking the community connectors out into GP surgeries, really extends our help hub offer, what we provide to customers in terms of support. I kind of see the community connectors as that front line. They're the ones that are most likely to meet a customer as early as possible. The sooner we can get to that customer and take note of and help them to work through their concerns or their problems that they might be facing, the less chance there are of them becoming a homeless case or somebody who needs longer term support in the future. So that's kind of where we are with it. We're in an excellent position to start to move to what I'd like to call phase 2 of our social prescribing journey for Broadland. And the third phase of that, which would look at the more urban fringes of Norwich and that part of Broadland, would not be able to be looked at for a little while yet, just because of contracting that currently exists in the one Norwich primary care network. So that's our longer term goal. And I think that probably covers everything.
Thanks very much, Kerry. Who's first in? Anyone? No. David?
Just a comment, really. I mean, I always hate contracting. I mean, so many commissioning organisations in Norwich. I mean, what is it?
David, could you just
10 or 12 actually deal with our health. I mean, the more they proliferate, the more the confusion. And I see that's justified in you saying there were 4 dealing with the communities which are suffering. And your idea of integrating under one, I think is super. Yeah, the fewer the commissioning people, better. Ideally, you should have one commissioning group for the whole of Norfolk. That's my fantasy.
Yeah, it's been a long-term issue, David, isn't it? One commissioning group. I know. Remember this for years, David, and I agree with you actually, but that's another matter, I guess. Anyone else? Yep. So the funding for this, can we just recap, is actually funded via the NHS? Yeah. And that's a 2-year contract.
It is, yeah.
And the 4 people involved, did you say they're full-time?
Yeah, so there'll be 4 full-time equivalents. I can never remember the banding structure. 3 Ds, 1 E. So there'd be, the E would be in this sort of supervisory role.
Right.
Yeah, but would still provide, the majority of their time would still be doing practical delivery of service. A minimal amount of time would be spent on supervision, the majority of time with customers.
Okay. And is there a direct relationship with them actually being at surgeries at any point in time?
Absolutely.
How does that flow through the amount of surgeries there are?
So surgeries will be allocated a certain amount of time from a connector to be within the surgery based on their patient size. I could bore you with the maths, but I won't. But there's a formula that we use and we know is quite successful in where we've done it in the past. That is not, however, hard and fast. If we put that in as a start point and we say to, I don't know, this surgery, you're going to have a connector here for 5 hours a week, and their demand is incredibly high, then we will bend and flex to that within what we can. We can't suddenly provide someone full time. We'd have to discuss contractual arrangements at that point. But we certainly would bend and flex and do what we can to support people, because if there's a huge demand there, then we can also think about, well, why is there a huge demand there? Why is there so much unmet need in that area? And could we look at our wider council services and our partners to perhaps do some more targeted work in that area? So at all times of social prescribing, we do have offices. They will be based in GP surgeries, and that's a real plus point. And I think what makes us different to other social prescribing services is that my vision for it is that when a customer sees a GP, they say, I'm going to refer you to Teresa. I'm going to refer you to Chris. It's not, I'm going to refer you to a faceless person that you might speak to in a couple of weeks over on the phone. They can introduce them much more informally and in a much more personalised way. And I think that is largely what helps with our success, that they're part of that team.
Thank you, Kerry. David, you wanted to...
I mean, social prescribing is a brilliant idea. I think it's going to work. How do you know it's working?
They get invited to the team Christmas party. That's how I know that our connectors are part of the team, that they're part of that wider service around the person.
Time, how are you going to say it has A, worked, or B, it hasn't, or you think it has? It's not easy to assess, is it?
No, it's hard. It's hard to assess how our prevention has helped people. But what we can do is talk to customers, and we can find out where did you go after you spoke to the community connector? Did you know about those services that you ultimately spoke to? How are you managing your lifestyle now? And there's sort of a matrix of things that we do. And though my comment was flippant, it's really important that those connectors are part of that medical staff team, and that the medical staff see benefit in referring people to this service, because sometimes we talk about social prescribing as a reduction in appointments. If that person stops coming to see their GP, if that person's got a long-term condition, you're probably not going to reduce the number of times they come in, but the length of that appointment and the focus on medical things that they can fix is anecdotal, but really valuable to that NHS service and to that customer. So, yeah, it is. Yeah.
Martin?
Really pleased this has come forward again. Just a question on the new medical practices that are being commissioned at the moment. Obviously, the delivery for those won't be until 23, 24. And will there be an automatic assignment from NHS to add social prescribing into those practices as well?
I would expect so. So where we're working with primary care networks who have made a commitment to social prescribing, we'll be having regular conversations with them anyway, and talking to them about any expansion of services and what that will require in terms of our contractual arrangements with them. Our experience is that once you're working with the primary care network, they don't just leave you to it. They talk to you, and they you discuss with them how things are going and where they want to see expansions, and we would continue on the same route with that. The bigger they get, the more funding they get, and therefore the more money hopefully we will get to provide services.
Also, Kerry, as you know, the councillors do play a role in, I know my casework, I do. And I seem to get a lot. I don't know why that is, but anyway, I do. But where you're getting advice about benefits, housing claims, and also, especially around vulnerable people, learning difficulties, etc., a whole range of things like that. And so I think being aware as councillors of the surgeries that are having this, hour, 2 hour, 3 hours a week, whatever it is. I think if the councillors are aware of those surgeries, it could be helpful information to the councillors. So apart from, we'll move on to recommendations to Cabinet, but I think outside of the Cabinet, we could ask direct questions yourself as overviewing Scrutiny Committee. Is it possible to ensure that councillors have some bit of information in terms of that spread, which could be helpful for us back in the community?
Absolutely. And I think probably more helpful to you, hopefully, is not necessarily knowing what surgery's doing, but just their telephone numbers, so you can contact the community connectors yourself. My worst nightmare would be that somebody would take a GP appointment to be referred into a connector. If someone goes to the GP and doesn't know about the connectors and they get referred in, great. But if you're working with customers, please just call us. If you think that there's support that we could give through the community connectors or for any part of the help hub at all, then do just get in touch, because the less people there are to step through, the better. So absolutely, we can do something to remind
So
members.
following the meeting, just before you come into following the meeting, could you actually provide that for us?
Absolutely.
As a commitment?
No problem at all.
You okay with that, Jamie? Brilliant. Okay. Because I don't think we need to request Cabinet to do that. It's just something that we...
I can do that easy.
Sue?
Thank you, Chair. It's a very general point. I'm sure this is a good initiative, a good move, and anything that improves the services for people who really need them is great. I just wanted to say, when I read the report, what came to my mind was we need a word of caution about the council competing with the third sector organisations that are mentioned here as in Citizens Advice, Mancroft, Shelter, AGK, for funding, which may be supporting their efforts. When a charity can multiply their effectiveness because they run with volunteers, so employing a person in one of those organisations who can then manage, say, 10 volunteers, you're multiplying the effectiveness in the community of resource to help people who are in need. And so I just wanted to say, having read this, we just as a council need to be very careful that we don't compete for the funding, which is actually keeping these help organisations afloat, especially given what they've all just been through in the last 2 years. And I would like some sort of reassurance that that is something that the council is actively not going to do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry. We work with our voluntary sector partners on a day-to-day basis. We do as much as we can to help support them and we work together. We've got some really successful examples of where we've worked together to seek funding as a consortium ourselves with groups. Ultimately, we're being contracted by the NHS, and that service that's currently being provided is not up to what they would expect. And at some point, we have to be realistic about, well, you can have the money, that's fine. And actually, would we be having this conversation if the service was good? I don't know. So we've got to be realistic about that. And I would also say, just think about the volunteers. With us comes a whole host of volunteers as well. So you'll all remember COVID, it's not completely gone. We did stacks of work with local community groups and volunteers, and that cohort of people remain to this day an absolutely invaluable asset to us, who we work with and we support, and who support us every single day. So I would say that behind every community connector is also a whole host of volunteers, as well as other partners and organisations. So what you definitely get with both services is access to a whole heap of stuff. They really are sort of the tip of the iceberg as to the type of support people can access. And we will often use social prescribing as a vehicle to refer people to those services. So they're still getting custom, but perhaps through a slightly different route through other contracts that they might hold. But absolutely mindful of that and how we can work better together to ensure that everybody's able to do as much as they can. And thinking about the geography of where we're operating, actually that can be quite difficult for small voluntary sector organisations to cover such a big area. So sometimes we can be quite a helpful advocate of getting people to the services that might be smaller, who couldn't offer such big contracts. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. Be sure I'm mindful of it.
Thank you. And so this direct contact with the NHS funding, which wouldn't go to these other organisations anyway. But
Yeah.
It's just not a competition, is it, in that way? Okie doke. Anyone else before we move to the recommendations? No. Okie dokie. So recommendations are 1 and 2. Cabinet to agree to contract with North Norfolk Primary Care to deliver social prescribing, effective date from December 2021.
2021.
Once the contract is signed, Cabinet agreed to recruit community connectors to bring complement to 4 full-time equivalents. And 2, Cabinet agrees to delegate authority to the Assistant Director of Individuals and Families to enter into this contractual arrangement. And I know we're all enthusiastically going to vote for this, as it's a real enhancement to the residents and those people in these situations, and also will actually assist us as councillors, I think, as well. If you could just make sure also that we minuted that we've asked for these direct contacts back through to councillors. If we could have that in a minute as well, that would be wonderful. Yeah, so all those in favour, please share.
There's the unanimous, Jim. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Kerry.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Live you in peace. Thank you very much.
Next item, forward plan, page 86. And who do we have here? Simon.
No,
So-
no,
I'll do forward plan and then we'll need to move to private session.
we need, he's in the exclusion.
Oh,
section.
sorry.
This is
Sorry, it's
the-
not Simon, is it? It's forward plan, is you, Emma. Sorry. Yeah, we're not there yet, though, are we? No.
Just
Right,
getting
sorry
steps
about
in.
that. So that was actually me confusing myself, actually. Sorry, Emma, fire away.
That's fine. Okay, so this is just before you now. We have started adding the forward plan to every agenda, so this isn't just cabinet. as overview and scrutiny, you have your work programme, but for every panel and every committee now, we've started adding a forward plan so you can see what you've got coming up. So that simply is the decisions that are coming through to Cabinet over the next few months, Chair. They probably will be subject to change, but it gives you an idea of what we've got coming over the horizon.
Yes. Any comments on the forward plan, Sue?
Do we normally have the budget on there?
So this is Cabinet's work programme. Are you talking about your October meeting that you have with Rodney over the budgets, or November, whenever it is you're having it? Because this is Cabinet's forward plan. Yeah, it should be on there in February. If it's not, it will be on there in February, because absolutely that's a key decision that will come through in February. We've just probably not got that populated quite yet, but that will absolutely come in February, yep.
Will become populated.
It will become populated, yes.
Okie dokie. So really this is for noting, isn't it? Yeah, okay. So we're noting this. Okay. Right. Simon, at last, me and Jamie was on the same page there, which was the wrong one. But before we get there, I'm asking Simon to sit in his place first. Thank you. Right. So I'll now move exclusion of the press and public. I move the press and public be excluded from this meeting for the remainder of the item of business, because otherwise information which is exempt information by virtue of paragraph 3 as of part 1 and schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, as amended by the Local Government Access to Information Variation Order 2006, would be disclosed to them. I so move. I try to make it interesting, and I so move.